So we can get started now. So as I shared, a copy of the slides and a link to the recording will be shared with everyone that registered within a week. And if you have any questions, please enter them into the questions pane at any time. We'll be holding all of the questions until the end, but feel free to submit them as they come to mind. We received a few questions leading ahead to the webinar, which we will open up the Q&A with. And without further ado, I'm Kelly McGelling, and I'm the Director of Research at the Public and Affordable Housing Research Corporation. And I'm joined today by my colleague, Kate Asp, who's a research analyst on our team. And together, we make up HAI Group's research team at the Public and Affordable Housing Research Corporation, also known as PAHRC. Today, we'll kick things off by giving you a quick introduction into who we are, and we'll also introduce you to our latest research, the Housing Impact Report. We'll then share research cited within this report that you can use to dispel myths about affordable housing and demonstrate its impact. We'll also share data tools that you can use to quantify the need for affordable housing and preservation programs. And we'll close with some time for your questions. So a little bit of background about PAHRC. Over 10 years ago, there were many myths about affordable housing. These misconceptions included who lives there, the resources housing providers need to do their job, and the impact that affordable housing has on communities. There was also a need for research that examines the policies and programs that position affordable housing providers and the communities they serve for success. And as some of you know, HAI Group is the nation's leading insurer for public and affordable housing providers. And as HAI Group is really committed to giving back and helping the housing providers through whatever challenges they face. So in response to those needs, HAI Group founded PAHRC in 2012 to develop research and data that spotlight the impact, outcomes, and value that affordable housing brings to families and communities. One way that PAHRC accomplishes this is through the Housing Impact Report. This is our team's longest running report, which we first launched back in 2014. And it examines the residents and communities served by affordable housing programs, the partnerships that have been developed to strengthen communities and residents, and features the latest research on the impact that affordable housing provides. Ultimately, our goal with the Housing Impact Report and the work we'll be discussing today is to equip affordable housing advocates with credible, accessible data that helps you quantify the impact of affordable housing and move the conversation beyond myths into evidence-based understanding. We dropped a link to the report in the chat. You'll also find a number of blogs that are associated with the report, as well as tools, which we'll be covering today. So I encourage you to check those out if you haven't already. And with that foundation in place, I'm pleased to turn it over to Kate Asp, who will walk us through the first myth that we will be debunking today.
Thank you, Kelly. So, as many here likely know, affordable housing is a very critical part of communities all across the country. Despite research that shows how affordable housing uplifts our communities, there are many myths and misconceptions, like Kelly mentioned, that exist surrounding those who live in these homes, why individuals and families need assistance, and the effect affordable housing has on neighborhoods and local economies. Myths and misconceptions surrounding affordable housing don't just shape opinions in isolation. They can influence policy decisions, funding levels, and whether communities support or oppose affordable housing developments. Our goal today is to equip you all with evidence-backed insights that can help dispel myths and demonstrate the vital impact of affordable housing. Perhaps one of the most common myths surrounding affordable housing is that residents who live in these homes do not work and take advantage of the system. The truth is that a large portion of those living in affordable housing are actually unable to work. Overall, less than half of assisted households have a member that is likely able to work. As of 2024, only 41% of assisted households had a working age non-disabled member compared to 47% in 2015. In addition to this, affordable housing programs tend to have specific rules surrounding income limits, recertification requirements, and documentation standards that residents need to adhere to, something many people disregard when talking about myths and misconceptions related to residents leaving the system. Of the over 6.6 million homes supported by affordable housing programs, nearly 2.7 million include older adults, nearly 2.2 million include individuals with disabilities, 2.1 million include children, and over 260,000 include veterans. This means that just households with older adults and households with children alone make up nearly two-thirds of total assisted households. Specifically, every 2 out of 5 households living in affordable housing are headed by an older adult, someone over the age of 62. In addition, 1 in 3 households have a member with a disability. Affordable housing is helping both millions of retirees and people with disabilities safely age in place, as well as helping working families facing hardship get back on their feet. In addition, many of the working age residents living in affordable housing are essential workers, including first responders, teachers, and more. Affordable housing is also increasingly serving more vulnerable populations, including extremely low-income households, older adults, and individuals with disabilities. These households often live on fixed incomes and are facing additional financial, health, and mobility barriers that limit their ability to work compared to their peers. For example, as of 2024, more than half of all renters were cost burdened, meaning that they pay more than 30% of their income towards housing. This problem was even more extreme for households earning less than $30,000 a year, with 83% being cost burdened and 65% being extremely cost burdened, meaning that they pay more than 50% of their income on housing. Next slide, please. When it comes to households that can work, the vast majority are working. 86% of households that contain at least one member that is working age and not disabled worked at some point in the last week or the last year as of 2024. Of these households that were employed during March 2024, over two-thirds worked full-time. In fact, employment rates among those living in affordable housing have actually increased over the last decade. In March 2024, 76% of assisted households were working, up from 70% in March 2015. The fact is that assisted households are working, and despite this, many families receiving assistance still live paycheck to paycheck. And that is because employment doesn't always mean stability, despite individuals' best efforts. Many jobs available to residents of affordable housing are part-time, seasonal, or have unpredictable schedules. Specifically, research shows that assisted households face more barriers to accessing gainful employment compared to their unassisted peers, and this includes poor self-reported health, more volatile work schedules, lower educational investments, stagnant wages, and additional caretaking responsibilities. These barriers make it difficult for families to access opportunities and increase their economic mobility. Research also shows that of those who are able to work but are not working, 60% face significant barriers to accessing employment as they are caring for children, older adults, or an individual with a disability. Affordable housing plays a crucial role for these caretakers. By reducing rent costs, families can afford to take time off work to care for loved ones or avoid the high cost of child and elder care. So, like I mentioned, affordable housing is increasingly supporting vulnerable populations. As our population continues to age, affordable homes will continue to support a growing number of older adults and individuals with disabilities. Between 2017 and 2024, the number of assisted households headed by an older adult increased by 20%, and the share of all assisted households headed by an older adult rose from 32% in 2017 to 40% in 2024. This trend is similar for assisted households that have a member with a disability as well. In 2017, 31% of all assisted households had a member with a disability, compared to 33% in 2024. At the exact same time, the number of households serving children has decreased from 35% in 2017 to 32% in 2024. Next slide, please. Something else you may commonly hear is that once somebody receives assistance, they remain assisted for forever. In reality, the median length of stay for all assisted households is 4 years. For more vulnerable populations, such as older adults or individuals with disability, median length of stay is longer at 7 and 5 years, respectively. As more assisted households serve older adults and individuals with a disability, the longer these homes are occupied, as these populations have that longer median and average length of stay. This even farther expands the need for preserving and constructing affordable homes to meet rising demand. Despite the millions of households supported by affordable housing, the number of families in need far exceeds the available support. Even when families qualify for affordable housing, assistance is not immediate. The average rate for rental assistance is about 17 months, but in some states, the wait exceeds over 3 years. This means that families in need often spend extended periods struggling without support, even after being deemed eligible. In fact, as of 2023, less than 30% of very low-income households received rental assistance, leaving over 13.7 million households in need without assistance. This is the case for households with children as well. In 2019, 26% of households with children in need of rental support received assistance, compared to 24% in 2023. As affordable housing increasingly serves more vulnerable populations, and as the need for affordable housing continues to grow, supportive services are more important now than ever before. These services can make a difference in the lives of residents so they can achieve economic mobility. Many public housing authorities develop strategic partnerships to connect residents with vital resources. For example, Worcester Housing Authority, in a recent redevelopment, centered supportive services. As part of the redevelopment, they created a new economic opportunity center that will provide services related to workforce development, job training, digital literacy, and more. Other PHAs partner with local health organizations to bring critical care directly to residents, or offer educational support through partnerships such as after school and summer programs, which also help working parents have childcare. To help turn these findings into accessible information about who affordable housing serves in your state, we released the Housing Impact Report dashboard alongside the Housing Impact Report. The dashboard helps you quantify who is supported in your community, including information on assisted households that receive assistance, that are very low income, have a disabled member, have an older adult, or have children. The dashboard also highlights how these trends have changed over time. Given that this data is at the state level, you could even pair the dashboard with real stories from your community to make an even stronger case about the important role that affordable housing plays in your neighborhoods. As Kelly mentioned, these slides will be made available to everybody following the presentation. You can access the dashboard through the link included on the slide or at parc.org under research. With that, I'll pass it back to Kelly to share more about how affordable housing benefits communities.
Thanks, Kate. Another myth that the Housing Impact Report helps dispel is that affordable housing doesn't benefit communities. While I know I'm likely preaching to the choir here, one of our goals is to equip you with research to help you make the case that affordable housing can reduce costs of public systems, stimulate the local economy, and benefit the whole community. And thankfully, there are a lot of studies to support that. For instance, one study found that children raised in public housing are more likely to achieve higher earnings as adults and face a reduced likelihood of incarceration later in life. And this study found that for each additional year a teenager spends living in public housing, their total discounted lifetime pre-tax earnings were projected to rise by about $45,000 for females and $47,000 for males. These increased earnings generate additional tax revenue, which the authors of that study projected would offset much of the cost of administering these programs before even considering other cost offsets, such as changes in healthcare use and incarceration. Numerous studies have also found that offering affordable housing, particularly if paired with supportive services targeted towards homeless individuals and families, can result in significant public savings that offset the cost of administering these programs as well. A systemic review of 20 studies examining permanent supportive housing programs with housing first models concluded that the benefits of these programs outweighed the costs. The median cost per person to provide housing first programs in this study was about $16,000 per person per year. However, the median benefit for these programs was about $18,000 per person per year. And these benefits were realized by reductions in healthcare costs and averted judicial homelessness, welfare, and disability transfer payments. Additionally, the provision, operation, and maintenance of affordable housing can also generate spending in local economies. One way affordable housing can stimulate local economies is by boosting the purchasing power of low-income households. When families spend less on rent, they have more money to allocate towards other vital necessities, whether it be groceries, healthcare, or education. And this reallocation can not only improve their quality of life, but also increase the demand for goods and services within the community, which can have an economic ripple effect that supports local businesses and supports job creation. Additionally, redeveloping and operating affordable housing can also stimulate local economies through the purchases that these investments support. Between 2013 and 2017, six large housing authorities spent $4.5 billion to maintain and modernize their public housing portfolio, which supported an estimated 7,600 jobs and created $7.6 billion in economic impact, highlighting the value and impact of these capital investments. Revitalizing affordable housing can also create substantial positive spillover effects that could enhance neighborhood well-being. Studies have found that when distressed public housing was improved through Hope 6, the surrounding communities saw notable increases in their property values and rents, along with reductions in vacancy rate and the average age of buildings compared to similar neighborhoods prior to that redevelopment. Research also finds that these neighborhoods that were revitalized by Hope 6 benefited from higher levels of home buying activity in some jurisdictions. The most pronounced benefits often occurred in neighborhoods that were previously the most economically disadvantaged and isolated neighborhoods, demonstrating the value that these improvements can lead to help catalyze broader community renewal. Additionally, revitalizing affordable housing, particularly that in isolated neighborhoods, can also substantially improve life outcomes for the children that move into these neighborhoods. A recent study released earlier this year found that children that moved into public housing revitalized by Hope 6 earned significantly higher incomes in adulthood, were more likely to attend college, and among boys were less likely to be incarcerated compared to children that moved into traditional public housing. And these gains were attributed to the stronger relationships built between public housing residents and their higher income families that moved into these neighborhoods following revitalization. And ultimately, each year that the average family lives in revitalized public housing, the lifetime earnings of their children were projected to increase by about $25,000 per unit. And if these neighborhood conditions are sustained for 30 years, the earnings gains for the children raised in these homes would surpass the initial taxpayer investment to revitalize these costs. And these gains would also generate additional tax revenue and could reduce spending on public assistance programs, offsetting much of the initial costs, further highlighting the value of these investments. And taken together, these studies conclude that neighborhood revitalization can be a viable, cost-effective strategy. And if you're a housing provider looking to replicate these types of impacts in your community, there's a couple tips that have been advised following these studies. So to do this, consider connecting the most isolated and distressed neighborhoods with surrounding communities, as research suggests that children living in revitalized public housing that became more connected to surrounding prosperous neighborhoods experience greater economic mobility in adulthood. And if you're wondering whether there's any properties that could benefit from this strategy in your community, I'll share two tools that you can use in a moment. Strong asset management also remains essential. All revitalization efforts should ensure that residents have access to safe, stable, and high-quality housing. However, the long-term outcomes that I had highlighted earlier are most likely when the investments are targeted towards properties with significant numbers of children. Finally, prioritizing the most economically distressed neighborhoods can help amplify returns. As I shared earlier, research suggests that revitalization efforts in these areas have historically generated larger community spillover effects. So to begin identifying neighborhoods that could be candidates for connection-based revitalization, you can begin by accessing Opportunity Atlas's map. And as a reminder, connection-based revitalization focuses on strengthening access to opportunity in neighborhoods that are disconnected from other community assets. And these strategies have the goal of improving the economic mobility of children raised in these neighborhoods. Opportunity Atlas flags candidate areas for connection-based revitalization, which are shown as black dots on this map. These neighborhoods are places where children's long-term economic outcomes are lower than average, despite being located near higher opportunity areas, as you can see here. And this pattern suggests that the challenge could be that there's not a lack of regional opportunities, but barriers that may prevent residents from accessing it, whether it be limited transit connections, social networks, or underinvestment in local institutions within that community. Practitioners can zoom into their city and region to see which census tracts have been identified as candidates. Now, just because a neighborhood isn't identified in here doesn't mean that it's not a candidate, but it's a place to start and can be powerful when trying to identify where to begin. And once candidate neighborhoods are identified using the Opportunity Atlas search tool, PAHRC's Neighborhood Opportunity Search tool can be used to understand which connections may be missing. And this tool compares neighborhoods within the same metro area and measures opportunity across multiple domains tied to economic mobility and healthy living. And it includes labor market access, educational opportunity, health outlook, and transit access. Each neighborhood is scored relative to its region, allowing you to see where opportunity gaps may be most pronounced within your own community. The tool includes affordable housing properties as well, as you can see in this pane over here and in the white dots, which allows you to see which properties are located in areas with rich access to education, employment, health, and transit access, which you can filter to the city, state, and or county that you are based in. At the same time, this tool can help you identify neighborhoods that may have been historically cut off from investment and where reinvestment strategies could unlock new opportunities for residents, whether it be transit, education, or health outlook. We will not be providing a demo of this tool in today's webinar, but if you're interested in learning more, you can connect with our team following the webinar, or if we have time during the Q&A session, we can briefly cover it then. And with that, I'm going to pass it back to Kate, who's going to introduce more tools and research your organization can use to demonstrate the need for affordable housing preservation.
Thank you, Kelly. So people often assume that once affordable housing is built, the problem is magically solved and that those homes will remain affordable long term. Like I'm sure many of you know, in reality, however, affordable housing is usually tied to specific funding programs that have expiration dates. That means that affordability is something we have to continuously invest and maintain over time. Without reinvestment or policy action, these homes can, and very often do, convert to market rate housing. Making sure this investment is happening is more important now than ever before as we're facing a significant wave of properties with upcoming expiring affordability. Over 440,000 homes are at risk of losing their affordability restrictions in just the next 5 years. In many communities, this could represent a significant share of the affordable housing stock. While constructing new affordable housing is crucial to addressing the increasing need for affordable housing, preservation is also a critical piece of the puzzle for ensuring that individuals and families across the country have a safe and accessible place to call home. In fact, research finds that preservation is even a more cost-effective option on average than building new housing. If we can advocate for preservation now, we can work to help ensure that homes at risk of expiring remain affordable for years to come. To help you in your advocacy, we recommend accessing the Preservation Risk Dashboard. This dashboard allows advocates, stakeholders, and policymakers to gain insight into the state of affordable housing in their communities. You can filter on state, county, and congressional district to customize the dashboard to your area of interest and find key information on things like how many homes are expiring in the next 5 years in your community, how many homes were recently preserved, what risks the affordable housing stock in your community faces, the share of homes set to expire in the next 5 years by program type, how many homes are set to expire over time in the next 30 plus years, and more. As Kelly mentioned, these slides will be made available to everyone, and you can access the dashboard through the link included on this slide or in the chat or at preservationdatabase.org under reports. Another common myth is that living in affordable housing negatively impacts children's academic performance. In reality, research shows the exact opposite. Safe, stable, and affordable housing plays a critical role in shaping educational outcomes for children and youth. When families have a place to call home, children may benefit in ways that support their long-term success. A huge way that affordable housing may support children's long-term educational outcomes is by providing the stability that children need to thrive. Research finds that frequent moves, housing instability, and homelessness negatively impact children's lives, resulting in missed school days, behavioral challenges, and gaps in learning. Specifically, children who switch schools frequently are more likely to have lower graduation rates and higher rates of mental health struggles and incarceration. On the flip side, affordable housing is associated with moving less, attending fewer schools, and having better school attendance. Children whose families receive rental assistance may miss fewer days of school due to illness, highlighting both the academic and potential health benefits affordable housing may provide. Stable housing affords children the opportunity to be more physically and mentally present as they move through their education, supporting their long-term academic success. Research finds that this support has measurable impacts on children whose families receive assistance. For example, a study of New York City public school students found that moving into public housing was associated with improvements in both math and reading school scores, while another study found that for each additional year spent living in a low-income housing tax credit property as a child, these children's chances of attending college for 4 or more years increased by 4.3%, and their future earnings increased by 5.7% on average. Many of the families that seek out housing assistance face disproportionate barriers to their child's school success compared to their unassisted peers. Affordable housing works to alleviate barriers and uplift families. Another unique way that affordable housing supports children's long-term success is by providing families with the opportunity to invest in what matters most. Research has found that families living in assisted homes spend an average of $344 more on child enrichment compared to their unassisted peers. This investment is associated with increases on reading tests, increases in math tests, and reported increases in parents' assessments of children's health. Not only is affordable housing reducing instability, which is associated with improved attendance, higher odds of attending college, and increases in lifetime earnings, but also potentially impacting children's health for the better. And this actually leads us to our next topic. Another common myth is that affordable housing worsens health outcomes. In reality, affordable housing may be a critical resource for our communities, especially for vulnerable populations, such as those experiencing health challenges. As I mentioned earlier, individuals living in affordable housing face unique barriers compared to their unassisted peers, and older adults are no exception. For example, compared to their unassisted peers, older adults have lower self-reported health, higher rates of chronic illness, such as high blood pressure, arthritis, and heart disease, are more frequently impacted by mental health conditions such as depression and anxiety, face greater mobility limitations, more frequently rely on public transportation, have higher rates of living alone and higher rates of needing personal care, and more. Affordable housing does not cause older adults to have worse health outcomes, but instead it supports those already experiencing unique challenges and who are in need of a safe and accessible place to call home. Luckily, affordable housing can help older adults age in place. Older adults living in affordable housing report fewer moves, greater accessibility features, access to in-home care, access to public transit, greater social interaction and community involvement, greater access to medical care, and even less anxiety about affording their medical care compared to their low-income, unassisted peers. The stability that affordable housing provides changes how people interact with the healthcare system and may be associated with improved health outcomes. Instead of delaying care or relying on emergency services, residents are more able to access consistent preventative care. Research shows that receiving rental assistance is associated with reduced stress, improved mental health, and lower odds of poor health generally. For example, one study found that with children who used a housing choice voucher for a year had a 50% decrease in hypertension and 7% decrease in reported stress. In addition to better health outcomes, affordable housing generates returns for the healthcare system as a whole. Research has found that 1 year after Medicaid recipients move into affordable housing, their emergency room use dropped 18%, Medicaid expenditure dropped 12%, and the use of primary care increased by 20%. Ultimately, affordable housing may change behaviors, reduce strain on the healthcare system, and lead to measurable improvements in both physical and mental health among residents. These health benefits are not just happening by accident, as housing providers work very hard to build systems that support the residents' health. In fact, research shows that approximately half of all public housing authorities have implemented health-related initiatives or partnerships. These range from programs that bring health services directly to residents and coordinate care, or programs that modify homes to better support aging in place. One example that our past research has highlighted is Rutland Housing Authority and their Supportive and Services at Home program, also known as SASH. SASH aims to improve health outcomes for older adults and help them age in place by providing health and wellness assessments, care plans, care coordination, and more. SASH has been found to increase healthcare savings and preventative health actions among participants. In fact, long-established participants are estimated to have saved over $1,000 annually in Medicare expenses. Another example is the IDADS program delivered by the Housing Authority of the City of Austin. The IDADS program supports health by helping fathers improve mental and emotional well-being through anger management and healthier decision-making. By strengthening family relationships and reducing stress, the program promotes more stable home environments for both parents and children. It also connects participants to resources and opportunities that support long-term stability. Finally, Bath Housing Authority's Comfortably Home program improves health by supporting older adults and those with disabilities. For example, the program has helped reduce fall risks through home modifications like grab bars, better lighting, and safer stairways. These changes actually led to a drop in fall-related hospitalizations from 7% to 0% within 6 months. By enabling older adults to remain safely in their homes, the program also supports mental well-being, independence, and overall quality of life. Across all of these areas, such as employment, community impact, education, and health, research consistently shows that affordable housing provides stability and opportunity, and that these factors may drive better outcomes for individuals, families, and communities. With that, I'll pass it back to Callie to share more about tools that can help support you with this work.
Thanks, Kate. So we talked about a lot of research that can help you demonstrate the impact of affordable housing broadly. But what about the need? Before we open it up to questions, I wanted to share some tools that your organization can use to begin collecting some local data to demonstrate need. One tool is the National Housing Conference's Paycheck to Paycheck database, which shows whether the jobs people hold allow them to afford to buy or rent a home in their metro area. By comparing local wages for hundreds of occupations with local rents and home prices, the database offers a clear answer that for many working households, the math does not work. In nearly half of occupations tracked nationally, workers cannot afford a modest two-bedroom apartment at the fair market rent. And this is not limited to just minimum wage jobs, as it in some communities also shows that teachers, healthcare workers, and emergency responders may be unable to afford the communities that they serve. And it allows you to compare the affordability of different metro areas or different occupations within a single metro area to help you make the case that employment alone is not a guarantee of housing security. The story becomes even more stark when we look at renters. Each year, the National Low-Income Housing Coalition's Out of Reach report asks a simple question. How much does a full-time worker need to earn to afford a modest home without being cost burdened? In their most recent edition, the National Low-Income Housing Coalition estimated that a full-time worker must earn $33 per hour to afford that modest two-bedroom home, and more than $28 per hour to afford a one-bedroom home. No state, metro area, or county across the country allows a full-time worker earning the federal minimum wage to afford that modest two-bedroom apartment at fair market rent. And this map allows you to compare the wage needed across different apartment sizes by state, along with the median wages for several occupations. But wages and rents are only part of the story. The challenge also becomes clear when we look at the supply. The National Income Housing Coalition's GAP report is another resource you can reference to demonstrate the need for affordable housing. And the coalition's team estimates that the United States has a shortage of more than 7 million rental homes that are both affordable and available just to the renters with extremely low incomes. And ultimately, for every 100 extremely low income households, there's only 35 affordable homes that are available nationwide. The shortage exists in every state and major metro area, and in some metro areas, the shortfall exceeds 100,000 homes for the lowest income renters alone. On this website, you can look at the housing gap for your state as well as the largest metro areas across the country. Another tool you can reference to collect local data is Local Housing Solutions Housing Needs Assessment Tool. This tool aggregates data for every city, county, and metro area to help you document and illustrate local housing needs and compare them to local, state, and national benchmarks. And it allows you to examine trends in population characteristics, rental affordability, homeownership affordability, affordable housing availability, the alignment of the housing supply and demand, the housing stock characteristics, and variation by neighborhood. It can show you things like who lives in your community, the severity of rental affordability challenges, which groups are the most cost burdened, and measure the geographic distribution of dedicated affordable housing, which can ultimately help you support funding for housing quality improvements as well. So I encourage you to check that out. More resources you can use to demonstrate housing needs include many of HUD's tools, which are linked to here. And they include HUD's Comprehensive Housing Affordability Strategy data, known as CHAS, their picture of subsidized households data, and their point in time count data. And linking these data sets together can help you explain various aspects of need. CHAS shows you who's experiencing housing instability. Picture of subsidized households shows who's protected. And point in time count reveals who's falling through the cracks. CHAS data estimates how many households have housing problems based on HUD's eligibility thresholds. It identifies housing cost burden, overcrowding, inadequate housing quality, as well as the need by income level, tenure, household type, age, disability status, and race and ethnicity. It can be a foundational data set for consolidated plans, PHA plans, and housing needs assessments. Picture of subsidized households, on the other hand, describes who's currently receiving assistance, whether it be public housing, housing choice voucher, or project-based subsidy residence. It includes the income and rent contribution, their income levels and rent contributions, race, ethnicity, age, disability status, and family composition, as well as the program type and geography. And this shows you the actual federal footprint of housing assistance rather than the need. And when paired with CHAS, it can help you answer critical gap questions, such as are assistance resources highlighted or aligned with areas with the greatest needs, and which populations have documented housing problems that may be underrepresented. Meanwhile, point in time counts are a snapshot of the sheltered and unsheltered homelessness on a single night in January. And they can show you who's experiencing homelessness and the specific subpopulations, whether it's families, veterans, people with disabilities, and youth, and can help you track trends in homelessness over time and assess the performance of the homelessness response system. Before we open it up to questions today, I just wanted to reiterate where you can find all the material we discussed today. The slide links to the full report, the dashboard, as well as all the associated blogs. There'll be a few more that will be released in the coming weeks, so if you haven't already, please subscribe to get the latest updates, which we'll post the link for in the chat. They all include really great graphics that are featured throughout this webinar today, so I encourage you to use those as well. And we hope that the research discussed today provides you with new data and tools to help you advocate for affordable housing in your community. But just know we only scratched the surface today. To learn more, I encourage you to check out our website or HAI Group's Resource Center. But now we're going to open it up to questions. As a reminder, please enter the questions either in the chat or in the question and answer pane, and we'll address them. And as I shared earlier, we received a few at the start of or preceding the webinar, so I'll open it up with those while we wait to see if questions trickle in. So one question we received was, do you have any tips for quantifying the impacted need for affordable housing programs in my community? So we've talked about a lot of data sets and reports that you can reference to quantify both the need for and the impact of. And a powerful way to do this is by combining locally relevant data with stories from the people and communities that you serve. They can potentially be linked to some of these studies that we shared if that data is not available for your community. And ultimately, this data can help demonstrate the scale of the challenge as well as the solution. And the stories help bring those numbers to life. So again, think about what data points resonate in your community and reflect your core programs. For housing authorities, this can be quantifying the number of households and individuals you serve, who those households are, and the partnerships that help make these outcomes possible. Pairing this data with resident and community stories can also be powerful to showcase how you all are rising to meet the needs. PAHRC has been partnering with NERC to spotlight efforts housing authorities have made to revitalize their communities, which have been a really powerful way to showcase how these investments translates to improvements in quality of life and stronger neighborhoods. And to go even deeper, you can partner with research firms to help with that. An example of this, the Housing Authority of Baltimore City contracted with a research firm to estimate how its operations, capital investments, and housing assistance programs contribute to local and state economies. And with that, if there's any research that you all are interested in, whether it be national or within your community, our team is always open to recommendations and ideas. Ultimately, if affordable housing advocates are looking for data, we want to be the ones to help support that. So we welcome those ideas. You can email Kate or myself following the webinar, or even drop it into the chat. I see we have another question that came in. So I know we have a need for affordable housing in my county. How do we get a housing authority in our area? So you can find a list of the housing authorities across the country on HUD's website. There is a list that includes their contact information, which can be a great place to start. And then you can go to their website and identify who the contact person is. The list also includes an email, which you can begin with as well. So housing authorities can be really great partners in this, especially since they often serve some of the lowest income folks in the community, which can also be great for service providers as well to help them develop targeted program offerings. So we will follow up with you. Okay, Kate just sent the link. So I encourage you to check that list out to locate your regional housing authority. Another question that we received related to this was regarding the data on how many affordable housing properties are in my city. So the question was, how do I know where I can find how many affordable homes are in my community? And I think this is a question for Kate, so I'll pass it over to you.
Thank you. So, two things come to mind when I hear that question. My first thought is the National Housing Preservation Database. As you guys may know, in 2012, alongside the National Low Income Housing Coalition, PARC created the National Housing Preservation Database, also lovingly known as the NHPD. And prior to the database, you'd have to go to a bunch of different disparate places to find information on what subsidies assist affordable housing across the country. But with the database, you can find consolidated and deduplicated information on the federally assisted homes in your area. So that's a great resource. You can filter by state, by county, by congressional district. So whatever area you're interested in, you're able to find that information on. In addition, if you want more summarized at-a-glance information, that same website also includes preservation toolkits. These toolkits help local affordable housing advocates and planners understand their affordable housing stock, assess preservation risks in their communities, and equip them with ideas to enhance their local housing preservation efforts. Specifically, information in these toolkits include information on your local affordable housing stock generally. It can help you recruit partners to support affordable housing, encourage property owners with expiring rent restrictions to maintain affordability commitments, and more. So we definitely recommend checking out both the National Housing Preservation Database as well as those preservation toolkits. And if you're interested in getting a preservation toolkit about your community specifically, rather than just a state at large, you're able to reach out to us through a link provided on that website and get a toolkit customized to your area of interest.
Thank you, Kate. Another question that just came in is there a tool that shows vacancy rates in current affordable housing in a particular area? It's a good question. There's a couple of different sources for vacancy rates. There's a few nationwide sources that don't necessarily focus on affordable housing specifically, but can help you look at the vacancy rates for at different census tracts, zip codes, and different communities at large. The American Community Survey, which you can find through the census's website, is a good resource for that. HUD also has a data set that tracks vacancy based off of the data collected by the US Postal Service, which again, this is broader geographic vacancy rates. But for affordable housing specifically, one resource you can consider accessing is HUD's Picture of Subsidized Households dataset. In this dataset, there is a field, if you download the project level data or the property level data, that includes an occupancy rate variable that can be a place to get started for this. And there may also be some data sets that note how many units are vacant. The challenge with this is that oftentimes the data is lagging by at least a year, and there is no context behind why the occupancy rate is what it is. Sometimes that could be if the property is beginning to be offline, if it's undergoing a redevelopment, or if it was impacted by a natural disaster and is basically being rebuilt. Sometimes there's data lags between when that is noted as it's vacant for a reason for redeveloping it versus it's vacant and available for move-in. Another resource you can consider if you're looking for more waiting list openings, there are some platforms, I believe Affordable Housing Online notes waiting list openings, which can be valuable if it's more of a housing affordability tool. Another question, and you asked about the Postal Service data link for vacancy. We will share that following the webinar. Another question that we received from Maria is, how can tenant-led organizations use these tools to identify when affordable housing is at risk and take action early to preserve it? It's a great question. It's pretty simple to identify which properties are nearing the end of their affordability restrictions once you log into the NHPD. So I can actually show you how to do it right here. And I'm just going to log in really quickly at preservationdatabase.org, go to full data access, and you can, and this will show you all of the affordable properties across the country. And then you can filter them to your area of interest. So we're based in Connecticut, so I'm going to start there. And then I'll go to New Haven, since that was the other example that we shared earlier. You just type in the city, state, and then from here, you'll want to note the property status, select the pin bar, and then select active and inconclusive. We do have properties that have lapsed their affordability restrictions, so you'll want to exclude those. And then you can filter those properties out by the latest end date. So you'll want to look at end dates that are coming up in the coming years. So I'll just do a couple years out. And this shows you the properties in New Haven, Connecticut that have an affordability restriction expiring in the coming years. To learn more about it, you can see its property characteristics. If it's funding, you can look here. So this is properties assisted by home. And this data can be downloaded. And with that, there can be targeted outreach that's done. Sometimes not all of these homes that are reaching the end of their affordability restrictions will necessarily lose their affordability. Sometimes the owner may choose to opt in to new funding to ensure that the property remains reinvested in, but it's certainly a critical juncture to ensure that these properties remain affordable. Other times the owner may choose to reposition it as unaided affordable housing, where it's not subject to those restrictions, but may still kind of be what some might call naturally occurring affordable housing. So that's where the outreach is really good from the local level to identify not only which are nearing the end of their affordability restrictions, but what the owner's intent is, which is something that is not tracked here. And then with that, if there is a local advocacy organization that those tenants can work with, they can help connect those tenants to additional resources and technical assistance that the owner might need to locate which funds they may be eligible for and target to those properties. But that's a great question. If you want to learn more about how you can use the NHPD since this is a really quick overview of doing it for that use case, we do have a whole separate webinar tracking how to use the National Housing Preservation Database, as well as a user guide that outlines how to do exactly just what we had demoed here. And you can access it by going to our website under the documentation tab and then going to the user guide. So definitely check that out. You're welcome. Any other questions that are rolling in through the chat? Otherwise, I can go through one of the questions that we received ahead of the webinar. So another one that I had mentioned we would get through if we had time. Another question. Okay, will a copy of the recording be available? Yes, we'll be sending out a copy of the recording following the webinar, as well as all of the links to the material shared, as well as a copy of the slide deck, so you can access all of these great graphics. So something else that we received interest in was showcasing those tools that I had shared earlier, the neighborhood opportunity search tool. So on our parks website, you can find it over here on the navigation, and you can learn more about our philosophy for the tool, as well as where each of these tools can be located. There's individual ones for each dimension of opportunity, including health outlook, educational opportunity, labor market access, transit access, and neighborhood desirability. For a great high-level overview, I think Opportunity Capital is a great place to start, since it really includes all of these 4 dimensions that you see here. If you want to learn more about the methodology, we linked that on our website too, which I encourage you to check out. And the tool is going to open up to the nation at large, and it's going to summarize the percentage of affordable homes in each metro area that are in neighborhoods that have typical or above opportunity capital. You can then filter it to your area of interest. So I'm going to go back to this Connecticut example that we had earlier. The map will zoom and pan to your area of interest. You'll see the properties, affordable properties, display here, and then you'll want to zoom in further. So I'm going to go back to the New Haven example we were just walking through. And here you see all of the census tracts or neighborhoods in New Haven. And again, all these properties are then zoomed in. You can zoom in a little bit further, and once you're in at a higher resolution, the properties will appear as white dots. You can click them to learn more information about them, and you can also see what type of neighborhood opportunity they provide. In this case, blue neighborhoods have higher opportunity ranks, while red neighborhoods have lower opportunity ranks. You can click each one to learn more about what comprises that metric, and then you can also filter it. So let's say you want to find properties in high opportunity neighborhoods. This will filter the property list. You can then click them, and that it will zoom to that property of interest and show you the pop-up box. So this can be a great tool for you supporting if you're a housing provider, if you're helping with mobility counseling. It can also help housing providers identify opportunities for prioritizing their reinvestment strategies. If you want to look at what amenities exist in a neighborhood and how they could be supplemented, whether it's through increasing transit access or school programmings, and this can be data to help support that. You can also look at specific metrics of opportunity capital. So let's say you have a property that's targeting older adults. With those populations, things like health outlook and transit access may be more important for you to focus on, considering the needs of those different populations. So you can also toggle to those on the pane down here to see how these metrics differ. So that's a really quick overview of how you can use the tool, and I hope it's really valuable to you all. Are there any other questions that we can help answer today? I think we've gotten to all of those. Give it a couple more seconds to see if there's any last questions before we wrap up today. But we really appreciate all of the engagement and interest for you all, as well as the time to be here today. So with that, on behalf of PAHRC, I thank you to everyone who participated in today's webinar. If you have any other questions that for our panelists that were not addressed, you can contact us here. I've listed our contact information here. And I hope you all have a great day.